Crazy. All right. Okay. So we're back again. We need to talk with two of my returning guests, Miss Nala Carter and Cass. So today we're gonna go over a couple different things, but I'll start with you all. Start with the ladies first. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. It's beautiful in San Diego, California.
Always good to hear. Always good to hear. You, Mr. Cass, how are you, sir? Uh-oh.
He's muted.
He,
You're muted, Kaz.
Oh, unmute. All right. I'm doing well, man. Everything is always good.
all right, all right. Just so we don't stay on too long, because I got some dinner plans, so we're gonna get through this nice and quick.
All right.
All right. So the first thing I want to start with is this whole madness that's going on with Jada, Will, and August Alsina. We're not going to get all deep into it. I don't care about the gossip, and I know neither of you do. But one of the things I wanted to talk about or start out with it was, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? Whichever one of you wants to start first.
I can start first. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I would say yes to the premise. I really don't care. This is their marriage, and for anyone that's been married before, there's so many things to marriage that people don't understand this on the outside. So, I just wanted to say that for the record. But um, I'm bothered by it a little bit because of the age difference. Because I have a young boy, and if a cougar were to try it with my 20 something year old son, I'd cut her. I'd beat her to the white meat. That's not okay. I feel like it was very predator like of her. She was going through stuff and she was broken, but he was also broken. And apparently he was a friend of Jaden's. So, like, how do you allow yourself to be, I'm sorry, entangled? How do you allow yourself to be caught up in a situation with your child's friend? There's that's the only, from a parent's perspective, I think that's the only thing that bothers me. Like, um, there's the whole trauma bonds when you've been through stuff, you kind of connect with other people, but she's grown. Like, they're both adults, they're both consenting adults, but she's grown in a different sense. Like, he sees her as her mother. He came to them for help, and
Mm.
so as from a parent's perspective, that's the only thing that I would say I'm bothered by.
What about you, Mr. Cass?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree. I honestly really don't really care. I mean, that's their thing, so they can do what they like to do. But in agreement with Ms. Carter, the thing that bothers me is how she used, like, she went to how she was trying to heal him and how she was trying to help him as an excuse for her getting involved in that entanglement. And to me, that's like not taking a responsibility for yourself. Um, Using that to say that that was the reason why he was around and that's what you all were doing, and then to say that happiness she mentioned that happiness um, was not something was something that you find in yourself, and that's all understandable. But it's like, why get involved with that young man when he's a friend of Jaden, when he's coming to you for assistance, and then you want to use you trying to help him as a reason for why you got involved with him physically. So it's sort of like you're not taking accountability for the fact that, as Ms. Carter was saying, is that you took advantage of somebody and you took advantage of a younger man. Whereas if the roles were reversed, if Will had done the same thing to a young lady, the world would go crazy, saying that he's a predator and he's this and he's that.
Yeah.
But when she does it and then she tries to use that as an excuse, that's the only thing that bothers me. Is it's like you're on your own red table where you want to hold people accountable, so hold yourself accountable.
Right.
Yeah, because that was my thing, and that's the reason that I wanted to bring it up was not so much, like I said earlier, not to get into the gossip side of it, but for that standpoint, because as you know, working in my past, one of my past jobs was working with adults with disabilities and working in last chance schools and stuff. You run into kids that have all sorts of issues, and they will latch on to anything or anybody that will pay them some attention. So, like the both of you said, I feel that she exploited the entanglement, the whole situation for her benefit. And then I think once she got, I guess, what she needed out of it, or once Will or Jaden or whoever made a big fuss, then she cut him off. And he was still, she may have healed herself, but he was still going through whatever he was going through at the time. So I think it was very messed up for her. And I know a lot of people hold Jada to this almost godlike status because of the red table talk and all the other stuff that she does. But on this one, I think that she's really the bad guy in this situation. You know, I don't, like we said, I don't care about Will looking like a sad puppy and all that other stuff. That's their business. But the fact that she exploited whatever he was going through at that time for her own benefit, I think is the bad part. And like you both said, if it had been Will, you know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram would have been going crazy, calling him a monster and all this other madness, you know.
Yeah.
But
I also want to add that I thought it was really interesting that, you know, she's, like you said, she's holding everybody accountable when they come to, you know, the red table talk, and she's, you know, she wants to talk about everything and be honest. And when Will asked her the question, Will had to kind of like push her to say, like, you know, she was like, oh, it was an entanglement. He's like, no, what was it? And she was like, it was a relationship. Like, he had to make her say it.
Exactly.
You know? I thought it was
Exactly.
interesting.
that's the thing. She didn't want to. I think the whole entanglement. I mean, if we all can sit here and think about it, I don't think I've ever heard that word used in that context
Exactly.
before. And I was telling my wife, I think it was just a way for her to sort of soften the blow. But they, you know, we're all grown. Don't soften the blow, because that. If I was Will, I think when she said the entanglement thing, I think I might have reached across the table and then remembered, like, okay, I can't do that. But the entanglement is a slap in the face. It's almost calling them stupid.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. It's wordplay, and what you're trying to do is, like you said, lessen the blow for yourself. But at the end of the day, what you did was, if you all are married, you had an affair. Um, I'm not sure. I believe they're still married. I know they were going through a period of separation, according to the red table, where they were done with each other. But if you're still married, technically, then that's considered having an affair or having an outside relationship. So don't call it an entanglement to use to sort of diffuse or to confuse people so they don't know exactly what you're talking about. And to your point, that's exactly what he had to do, was call her out and said, no, this is what you had was an affair, and be specific with the type of relationship that you had.
Right.
Yeah, so then the next thing I'll go to, unless either one of you have anything else you want to add to that.
I'm good.
Ooh. Now, so Cass, I'm gonna start with you on this one. So, you know, Nala, don't kill me for this, but as a man, when August jumped out there and just kind of threw everything on the table, as a man, how did you feel about that? The way that he may have been hurt, but the fact that he ran out there and just told everything because he was hurt, how did that make you feel?
Personally, I really didn't care. I mean, again, like
Yeah, I know.
like the situation doesn't really mean anything to me. But I think it's weird. It's interesting. There's sort of been a shift in men, sort of over the last 15, 20 years, and how men sort of approach things. And I like the fact that sort of men are expressing themselves more and are allowed to express themselves more. However, the flip side to that, though, is you running to Twitter, and I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how he went out and distributed information, but if you're going on social media to expose an affair that you had with somebody, to me, that's just messy. Just overall in general, that's a lack of respect for yourself or for the other person. And unfortunately, people think that all attention is good attention, and many times in society nowadays, that's all it is. They're entertainers, so what they're looking for is people to look at them.
Mm.
He's an artist, so the more people know his name, the more people are likely to buy into his music or notice him or this, that, or the third. So it's really weird to me how there's been a shift sort of in men, but I also look at what they're involved with in their careers. So for them, attention is attention. I don't like him going to social media, but that's sort of how it seems like people do things nowadays. Is that they run to social media and they want to get clicks and they want to get attention in that way. And that's just sort of how society is nowadays. So, I mean, personally, I don't care, but on a sort of guy level, I think it's soft, I guess.
You could say bitchy.
I know.
You can say bitchy because that's the first. When I first heard, I was just like,
That's where you were going.
yeah. I said, no need
Yeah,
to
I didn't. You
skate.
know, this is I know.
No need to skate. I mean, because honestly, and I'm sorry, now let it jump in here, but that's what I thought when I first heard it. I was like, he did what? And I'm like, that's some real, you know, as Puffy said, I'm making a man. That's some real bitch assness. And it's just I couldn't deal with that one. But go ahead, Nala. Sorry about that.
I mean, no worries. I don't really have much to say. It was an interview with him and Angela Yee,
Yeah.
and it was just super long. Somebody tagged me in it, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. Okay, what is this about? And there's all this buzz around it, but I just think like I don't know if he did it for clout, possibly, because like he was saying, a lot of these men now do a lot of things just for attention. So it possibly could be, but I think that he's broken, but he's been broken. So who knows?
He definitely, and I'll just say from my opinion, he definitely did it for the clout part of it because he had an album that recently came out. So I feel that that's why he did that. It was just like, okay, maybe he was hurt, and him exposing Jada and Will and all of that was a perfect way for him to draw more attention to the album because his first two albums did great, and then he kind of disappeared, and and then he popped back up on the scene with this interview because I personally haven't heard anything from him in a couple of years. So this, I think, was perfect timing for him.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just as like, there's no healing in that. There's no healing in you coming out with it. So if you're still going through something, you coming out with that to everybody or to the world is not. I mean, what's the healing? Who's healing you with that? True. I don't understand. Yeah. Oh well.
Well, we can jump off that now because I think we spent too much time on that anyway. But so the next thing, so that all leads into my next question. So and it all ties into that nonsense we were just talking about. But with Jada and all that other stuff, now when it comes to everything else in society, and I guess the way women are looked at, see how I word this, because men are looked at in bad light. Men are all dogs and all this other stuff. So now when women are doing it, do you feel like women want equal treatment when it comes to that, or should women be looked at differently because in the way society looks at it, men have been doing that for years?
I think it's more accepted when it's men. I don't feel, kind of like what you said at the beginning. If this were Will and he were to have slept, hypothetically with one of
Willow,
yeah, with one of Willow's friends. Oh my God, like Black Twitter would just like go in on him, and he would not be, the Will Smith that everybody has fallen in love with, and his career would probably just, plummet. But I think with Jada, it's more acceptable, you know. But I think that that's how society, how they see women versus men, because again, nobody's calling Jada a predator. She is. She was. However you want to, you know, cut that up, but it's like she's, you know, it is what it is. But if the tables were turned, I think that they would have been a lot harder on Will. And I think that she, by, you know, the verbiage that she was using, she didn't even want to accept accountability on her own. So no, it wouldn't, it's not equal as far as like if it were a man that had done, you know, those actions.
But do you think that, that's what I mean. So do you think that women, because you hear a lot of women saying that they want equal treatment. Now me, I tell my wife I'm an equal opportunist across the board. I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna get punished for doing this, then I would expect a woman to get punished the same way. Could women, in your opinion, could women accept that equal responsibility if the Black Twitter were to go in on her like they would Will?
Wow, that's a weird question. I would say I don't know, because I think it depends on the type of women that we're talking about. We have women that, oh, all men are dogs, men are trash, black men are trash, and they just look for a reason to drag, you know, men and black men through the gutter. But when it comes to women, it's, oh, power, sis, you know, sis, I see you, you a queen, and we always uplifting. We're so busy uplifting, and I feel like sometimes we don't, so we can't, you know, separate ourselves from the situation to say, like, you know, again, I'm looking at the situation from a mother's perspective. I have a young black son, and if this were my child, we fighting, like, you know. I would hold her accountable. Women like me hold Jada accountable. Women like myself see the situation for what it is, sees Jada as a predator. You know, it's not trying to take her down or to, you know, dethrone her, but it's like, yo, that was shady, and you're a mother. Why would you put yourself in a position as a mother to do that? So myself and my friends, we holding her accountable. I can't speak for the rest of Black Twitter and how people are looking at her, and because everybody's like, oh, girl, you know, she was having fun with him, and oh, this is a child. This is, you know, compared to her, this is a child. I'm sorry, like, I can't, you know, enjoy the fantasy of some young buck or whatever. This is a child compared to Jada. So me and my associates, we are holding her accountable. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. All right, Mrs. Kaz, what about you?
I don't, I mean, I agree. I don't think that it's the same. I think it's seen differently. But I don't necessarily know that. I know we're talking about it being a black situation, but I don't necessarily think of this as a black situation, because if you think back, what was the actress? She was married to Bruce Willis.
Demi Moore.
Right. Exactly. So she married Ashton Kutcher, and she was what, 30, 40 something at the time when she married him, and he was just a younger guy also. So I think overall, it's seen differently for men as opposed to as it is for women. However, I know you're seeing it from a mom's perspective, and that would be offensive to you. From a guy's perspective, from a dad's perspective, at least for myself, I would say, think if my 25 or 26-year-old son came to me and was, you know, Dad, you know, I got involved with somebody, you know, I messed with somebody who's
mom's age,
right, 40-some years old. I think I might have questions, like, in front of his mom, but on the slide, it's, oh, good job, bro. Go ahead, you know, handle your business. Do what you got to do. However, but it's the same thing. It's like, I also see your point to where, again, as an older person, because of the situation and what he was going through, then it's completely separate. But for women, it's just, women are sort of seen in a different light when they do things like that. But I also don't believe that women want to be held accountable the same way that they want that they would hold men accountable. And I'm not speaking for all women, but I think more for society-wise, they're not held to the same standard that men are. But I also believe that there are women like Ms. Carter who are going to hold you accountable and say, like, that's wrong, regardless of whether or not, however you will look at it. That's just you're 20-some years old and you took advantage of the situation, or you're 20-some years older than that person. There's nothing that you have in common with that individual. There's nothing that you all can build really in that situation. So really, it's more of a physical type of situation, at least in my eyes. And for my daughter, yeah, I don't want you involved in that type of situation. For my son, I mean, it's bad, but it's like,
here we go, the double standards.
I mean, it definitely is a double standard. It definitely is a double standard, and I'm not gonna say that it's not. But that's sort of how society is with certain things, and that's sort of a difference between men and women. And everybody wants to say equality, but there's certain things that is just not gonna be the same type of equality perception-wise, and then sometimes just in realistic, this is not. We're built differently, and women are greater at certain things than men are, and men are better at certain things than women are, and women are better in certain emotional situations and things like that than men are. That's just the way that we're built. So we're held differently, but we should be held differently. We should be looked at differently. But I don't think that people, that folks want to be held 50-50. I definitely don't think that.
Well, as far as the daughter talk goes, I can't speak to that. I have 3 boys, but I don't think I would take too kindly to my daughter coming home with some 40, 50-something-year-old man. I'm like,
no.
Right there.
No, I guarantee you, I come into the door like Mike Lowry, and we're gonna have it's gonna be a serious type of conversation with that individual, and then with my daughter, because it's gonna be like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to be abused and used. So that's how I would see that situation. Like, that dude is taking advantage of you. There's nothing that you guys gonna build with that.
Yeah, but it's manipulation across the board. Older men like to date older women because they can, they feel like younger women aren't as jaded as the older ones, and they could, build them into what they want to. But it's, again, I don't see it differently. I think it's the same across the board. But if my daughter were, I'd bust her to the white meat too. Like, no, I'm about to go off on you and him. But anyway, I digress.
All right, well, I'll jump off that before somebody end up getting hurt. All right. So the next thing, have either of you been keeping up with I don't know, I hope I say her name right. Wasn't it Ghislaine Maxwell? That whole story?
No.
Oh, okay. Good. I got something for y'all then. She's okay, so recently, I want to say within the last 2 weeks or so, she's the lady that's been arrested and accused of being the recruiter for Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know I butchered her first name, but I know the last name is Maxwell.
Okay.
So
that's why I didn't know what you were talking
about. Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm looking at it, and like I said, I actually paid this more attention than that Will and Jada nonsense. But for me, with this story, I don't think that they're going after her necessarily for being the recruiter. I feel that they're going after her because she has so much dirt on these politicians, and the same way that they, whatever they did to keep Epstein quiet, whether it's a conspiracy or not, I don't know. But I think that they're just going after her because she has all of these names and stuff. So what do you think about that whole thing, that whole situation?
You can go first.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say you want to go first.
I didn't.
Oh, I'll go first then. I'll go first. I think. I mean, if she has that type of information, I think pretty much everybody knows how the story's gonna go. Um, somehow the information is not going to get to the public. I mean, regardless how it goes, we're not going to get that type of information and be privy to who was on that list and who was there and who's been visiting the Epstein place or any of that information. I'll be honest, if I was anybody associated with any of those things, I would never let anybody know what I know. If I was her, I would say I burned all that information. I know nothing, because at the end of the day, I read a report, something about there were some reports that the security cameras were turned off so that she could have private moments or something going on like this. And when you hear stuff like that, I mean, you pretty much know what that's building and leading up to. And there's going to be a situation where either she's going to either be released and nobody's going to know about her again, or something's going to happen to her there. But again, we're not going to get really any information. When it comes to stuff like that, they're not going to put that information out, because that type of stuff really would damage probably the majority of officials, high-ranking officials in all types of companies, politicians, owners of sports companies. Like, it's just, they're not going to give out that information. They never do. And this lady will go away in some form or fashion here within the next month or two. You won't hear nothing else about her.
Yeah, I agree. She's gonna get a nice big check and disappear somewhere. But it's similar to the situation with R. Kelly. Again, I'm going to touch on it from a parent's perspective. Where are these mothers? Where are these parents that's allowing these babies to be around these grown ass men?
I mean, so I think one of the issues is that we're thinking about parents maybe how we are, and how our parents may have been, but I think there's been a huge shift in parenting and how people approach parenting, unfortunately. And parents don't have the same, I don't want to say level of care, but I'm going to say level of care, and level of attention. And then they also have different desires, and people put money above a lot of things. And unfortunately, they many times put it over their children. And in a lot of different ways, whether it's just only providing money, but not being there emotionally, sending your kids off to different places and things. Like, people put money and they value things like that over their children all the time.
Yeah, I agree, because I don't know, and it's, just to go off of what you said, like money, fame, status, just wanting to be a part of something, and they're not paying, realizing what they're jeopardizing, and yeah, I just know it's a scary world that we live in. And I just the other day, I was on my patio, and there's this little boy, maybe 3 or 4, just wandering by himself. I mean, it's a fairly nice neighborhood, but he's 3, maybe 4, by himself. And then a couple hours later, I saw his mom looking for him. Ma'am. I just, so again, to go off of what you said, I think that parents are just stepping back and, allowing the kids, it's a lot of latchkey kids out here just kind of taking care of each other, trying to figure things out themselves. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, as a parent, even if I had like 5 or 6 jobs, I'd somehow still be a hawk when it comes to my children. It's our job.
I mean, it's unfortunate. There's not to jump to jump off the subject, but do you remember there was a video recently of a young lady, I think she was in Chicago. I don't know which. I don't want to say Chicago. She posted a video where she was celebrating the fact that CPS took her children.
Oh wow, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it was circulating. I'm surprised you guys haven't seen it, but it went pretty viral. Where she was celebrating the fact that CPS came and took her children, and I think again that children were having children, and when I say that, I mean mentally. Just because you're 20-some years old doesn't necessarily mean that you understand what's going on in this world and you understand how to be a parent. And yeah, there's a lot of latchkey kids who didn't really receive parenting, and then there's folks who just don't know how to. Like, their parenting skills are
trash, basura.
Yeah, they're lacking. Like, they just don't know how to do certain things, and many times it's hard because they really don't know how to do certain things, and they don't know the level of attention that really is necessary when you have children. Like, there's no, you can take your eyes off of them, but you don't take your radar off. Your radar never goes off when your children are around, or even when they're not around. You're always wanting to understand what's going on and where they're at, and I think it's just been sad watching the shift in society and how folks don't really pay attention to folks. I mean, it's just not just children, it's just people.
Yeah.
It's just a lack of compassion with people and empathy with people.
But you know, the thing that I think is, and I know my wording can be bad sometimes, but the thing that I think is funny about that whole situation is how you said she was celebrating that CPS took her kids. To a certain degree, I'm looking at it like, you know what? I'm kind of glad that she's happy that they took the kids, because if the kids would have stayed, who knows what she could have or would have done to those kids. So her celebrating that could be, you know what? Thank God that, CPS came in and saved the kids, or CPS came and saved me from making a bad mistake. And I know some of that is wishful thinking. But, I try to look at it from another angle and say, that's good for the kids. Maybe she knew she wasn't a good mother. And, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, you're right. You're right.
No, that's all I was going to say is that, maybe, she's just like, I'm not fit for this. Now, if it was 4 or 5 kids, I don't know why it took until you got to that 4th kid to realize that you're not a good mother. But, it's
contraception. People just don't know how to use it,
Mm-hmm.
Understand, people think the pull-out game is strong, and y'all got 5 kids later, 8 kids later, like, people they're not thinking about the consequences of actions. I'm just saying, a lot of times people are in situations where they have like 5 different baby moms, mm-hmm. and you're like, bruh, don't you see a pattern? I see a pattern. Do you not see a pattern? Maybe if you strap that joint up, you want to be out here slanging it or whatnot, cool, do you? Strap it up. And then don't get me started, because who knows what kind of diseases y'all got, they have, but whatever, people just aren't making good decisions at all. That's why she ended up in a situation like that, and she's celebrating that she doesn't have her babies. It's asinine, but
I'm glad you cleared up the fact and said they got and not y'all, because you clearly said y'all. I'm glad you cleared up that it was they. And
no, but I mean, it's I don't know. Sometimes we have to. I think a lot of times, and now the conversation gonna carry itself, because I only had probably about 5 questions, and I didn't want to stay on the crap we started with too long. But I think at times you got to look at both parents, because and say, all right, what's the reason you're on? Like you said, you're on child number 5. What would happen with the first 2 if whether it's the same the same baby father, or if it's 2 or 3 different guys, or if, for the guys, if it's 2 or 3 different women and you have all these kids, it's just like you got to make a decision. I understand that you, like you said, you think your pullout game is strong, but if you're on 5 and 6, something wrong there.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it's people don't. I mean, children aren't. Again, there's no value in there's a decreasing value in children, and I don't mean like that sounds weird, but
No,
people
no,
don't care about having kids no more.
they
I
don't
mean, you have a
care about
kid,
kids like
you,
our
you have
parents.
a kid, and then the flip side to that is, unfortunately, many times it's like I get a kid, I get money,
Mhm.
or I get this, or I get that, and it's just it's a weird mindset and a weird perception to have that people have is that a child is just a means to an end sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's really unfortunate because the long-lasting effects of that on the child carries on to their next relationships and how they treat people and how they treat their spouse and how they interact with people of the whatever type of relationships that they're in. And so it's a terrible perpetual cycle that just continues. So that's it. I'm done. Come on, that's all.
Well, I have a question. I have a question. This kind of brought up a thought, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. So, Boys in the Hood. Remember, not Trey. What was Morris Chestnut's his character?
Ricky.
Ricky.
But yeah.
Remember how the mom treated them both differently because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you. How do you see that? I don't know what your situations are, Jamil. I think yours are all with your wife. But like, if you were to have different kids with different women, do you treat or do you understand why people do that, or why? I think it's common with women. They dis they ill treat a child or mistreat a child based on the interaction that they have with the kid's father. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think that's prevalent in with men?
But yeah, I think it's prevalent with people in general. I don't really think that that's a male female. I think that people are like that, and I think that what happens is that you associate that child with that person, like you were saying, and then so I'm going to treat you a certain way based off of that individual and off of my relationship with that individual. But then also it's potential, and you look at one child and you're like, your little badass is always in trouble. Whereas Ricky is scoring touchdowns and everybody loves him and he brings a certain level of attention. And then also he brought possibility. Again,
For the
it was
future.
For her
right,
reason? Okay.
exactly. Like he can change situation. Whereas Doughboy, he wasn't going to change the situation.
They're
Just
gonna
going
make
to be
it
able to,
worse.
it was going to be more crying on the plastic couch. So I mean, but I definitely, to your point, I definitely think that um, it is prevalent that people do treat children differently, but I think it's based off of that relationship they have with the other individual.
But don't you think if she treated him, because she treated him like that from the beginning, so do
Mm-hmm.
you feel as if, because I feel like we speak life into our children, good,
Absolutely,
bad, indifferent.
absolutely,
If I'm looking at my daughter like you're never gonna be anything, and I'm spewing all this negativity into her, onto her life, she's going to believe those thoughts, those words.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so, do you feel like that played a part in why Doughboy was that way?
Well, why he ended up being that way? Well, sure. I mean, again, that's conditioning. So just on a basic level, if to your point, if you're told all day that you ain't shit or you're nothing, then you're going to start believing that you're nothing. If someone's not putting effort into you and showing you a type of love that you need, then yeah, you're going to feel less than. So you're going to fall into a more destructive mode. But that's just people in general. So, I mean, definitely how she spoke to him, how she raised him, played a part in who he grew up to be. I think many times folks don't understand the impact of your tongue and of what you say.
Yes.
And um, I'll be honest, I had to learn the hard way because I have a sharp tongue, and I used to use that to affect people, and I used to do it on in sports. I would use it in sports. If I was playing against you and I knew something about you, I would talk to you in a certain way because I wanted to make you mad. And I use that against you because if you're mad thinking about me, you're not thinking about what you're supposed to be doing on the field. So there's just the tongue is serious business, and when it's used properly, it can be extremely empowering. But there's a flip side to that, and when it's used in a different way, that thing will tear you up for life.
I think it's even worse when the child resembles a person that you don't like. I think that even adds even more fuel to that fire. It's just like, she couldn't
And that's
stand
where the little uglies come in. You little
Yeah.
ugly.
And give him the business like he's his father because he looks like him. And then, like you said, then they're so focused on the hate that they, forget that, this is a child. This is my child, because they're so pissed off at the father for whatever reason, whether the relationship didn't work or vice versa, because men, to your point, Nala, men do it too. But men's thing is 9 times out of 10, the child's going with the woman. All right, well, if she don't want me, I'm not gonna be there. And they just tip out the door, and I might pop up every once in a while, or a lot of times, men and women, but I think possibly more men feel like, you know what, if I'm not there, that's gonna hurt her, the mother, and it's not gonna hurt the mother. You impact, like you said, you impacting that child on a level that you're not even thinking about. So it's just like, parents on both sides just need to get their head in the game and go, stop chasing this dude or stop chasing this woman. If they don't want you, you got to focus on that child. Because like I said, you're putting more messed up adults out into the world, and then it lead into a whole bunch of other nonsense with the system and all this other craziness. So did we answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
What about you, Cash? You have anything?
Well, what do you all think about the state of relationships nowadays? Like, and how do you think that people place the same value on like marriage that they did, let's say 20 years ago?
Hell no. Things are so different now.
Why do you think that is?
People blame it on social media. Social media makes it easy for people to cheat, and I don't know what changed, but it's definitely not the same. A lot of women, I'll speak from a women's perspective because I blog on relationships, and it's just interesting to hear how some people think, and some of the people are more willing to comment and have thought on things on social media because they can, hide behind comments and whatnot. But I think the value of what relationships are, people look at, back in the day, our parents, our grandparents, and, reality, a lot of the times, that older generation, they had side families and all of these things, but everything was a secret. And so now people are talking about, all these side chicks. Well, it was kind of always a thing, but there was a level of respect for the wife or the mother of the children. And I think now the side chick is being glamorized, and again, money, fame, wanting those things as opposed to wanting marriage, because I think people think that it's not attainable. People think that these things are really far-fetched and they may never get it anyway. So I'm going to do me and be happy. Whatever that might be. I could be sleeping with somebody's husband. I could have, 2 boyfriends or whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that those things work for me, whether it's financially, emotionally, sexually. I think that is what changed based from now versus what it was back then. What do you think, Jamel?
I think it's due. I think it's a couple of factors. I think the respect is gone, like you said. And I'm not speaking from no experience, but but the respect for the wife and all that, I think is completely gone, or just a respect period. Because now, if you're out anywhere or anything, you're more, and I'll speak freely, I'll say this in front of my wife. If a man has a ring on, he's more apt to get more attention than a guy without a ring on. And that's where, I think the lack of respect starts. It's just like, all right, well, I know he has something to lose, so he's not gonna act crazy if I get with him or whatever the case is. Crazy is crazy, That's what I think a lot of them fail to realize. And the second thing I think is people have this people idolize the wrong stuff. For example, and I swear I think I'm gonna have to name this episode here like Will and Jada, but but with Will and Jada, if you think about it, how so many people look at it, and if you look through Twitter and everything, everybody have relationship hashtag relationship goals or marriage goals and all of that. So now that the veil is starting to come down on that perfect relationship that everybody thought they had, so now everybody's going to look at it and go, like you said, oh, it's not attainable. So why should I try? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think everything is kind of messed up, as instead of people trying it, it's just like, all right, well, they do it this way, so I'm going to try it this way. Not knowing that, I think you said when we first started, everything isn't for everybody, or that relationship or what goes on in that relationship may not be for my relationship. And I think that's where the disconnect from relationships 20 years ago or so, or when our parents were in relationships, to now.
Interesting.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I think it's just easier to find new relationships. I think people think it's just easier to find new relationships now, and I think people have fallen in love with the honeymoon period of relationships, where everything is all fun and you're getting to know each other and you're doing stuff. I think people really think that relationships are they just happen, and they don't understand that a relationship is going to be one of the hardest things that you're going to involve yourself in. Just because it's always a progressive thing. And when I say hard, I don't mean it in a negative way, but it's always progressive, and it's always a learning thing. So you never stop learning about the other individual and learning about yourself with the other individual, and that can get rough sometimes, especially depending on whatever situation or relationship. I mean, there's relationships where you have a woman coming into a situation where a guy has kids, or vice versa, or it's interracial, or now it's where the family might not approve of the relationship because it might be a same-sex relationship. So there's a lot of different things that occur now, but I just think that people are just so infatuated with the newness of relationships, and they don't really understand or want to go through, I guess, the hardships of relationships, and sort of they're like roller coasters. They don't like the downs. They just like all of the spins and the loops and all of that, but they don't understand there's a lot of going at the same, and then there's some building, and then there's some dips. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think, to go off of what Jamil said, people are so busy trying to be relationship goals, trying to post for the gram and post for the book, and it's like that's great, but that's not the premise or the substance of what marriage or relationship is really about. Reverend Run was on Black Love document on IG, and he said, you know, him and his wife, they've been together for like 30 something years, I think. I don't know the number, but he said that you're supposed to stick in there no matter what. However, you're not supposed to continue to do things that you know is going to hurt your partner. So to go back off of the Will and Jada situation, how do you build back from that? Because, you know, he said that Will said that this was an issue. They had a lot of arguments about this about 4 years ago, when he found out, or this was revealed, and now they have to try to figure out how to, because it's almost like, you know, the cut became reopened again. So, you know, Will looked hurt. He looked, you know, like he really was struggling to deal with this and process it all over again. So one, I think, yes, it is about respect, but it's about, yes, you're supposed to stay in there no matter what it is you guys go through. You're supposed to work on it together, but you shouldn't continue to do things to make you destroy what you guys have built.
Yeah, man, it was tough watching Will make, like, what he said. He feels like the guy who got to stand next to his wife when she
Yes.
when she admits it. Like, that's tough, man. I feel bad.
Yeah.
That is as a man, and this is one of those differences. That is terrible for your pride and your ego. Like, men can be egotistical and prideful with things like that. Like, you don't want everybody to, like, if somebody's quote unquote dipping your cookie jar, you don't want everybody to know that your cookie jar got dipped in. Like, that's between you and the individual. But once now you got to stand there and you sort of got to pose with the jar, and you're like, oh man, like, my jar look different now. So it's, oh no, that's tough.
That's interesting that you said the jar looks different now. So not to be the stereotypical woman, but to switch it around. What about when Bill Clinton, you know, with the whole affair with Miss Lewinsky?
Mm-hmm.
You know, his wife had to stand by his side, knowing that, you know, he got his thing wet a little bit, you know?
Oh boy.
And she has to stand there, and we women are expected to stand by our man, be supportive, put that smile on our faces, and we have to stand by him. So now the roles are reversed, and now we see Will struggling to smile through it, to save face, because he just looks distraught. So
that's not us. That's not what we have.
You know, is that there's that double standard. So when you said, oh, now my cookie jar looks differently, why does it look different now?
Well, I mean, because there's been other hands in it, and, like, so you, like, before everybody sees that your cookie jar is different, you see your cookie jar is different. You're like, look how they're different now. Like, that's just what it is. And then when everybody else, and you know, for women, there is a double standard, but again, it's gonna be that. And I think sort of what it is I'm gonna say, I want this to jump into a whole different thing, but women are, I think it's when they say stand by your man, I think people hear that and they hear the negative to that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes what I hear is the positive to that, and the positive to that is that the woman is emotionally the strong one. Like, she is seen as the one who's like the backbone, like the heart, like that's generally her. So yeah, you got to stand up there and you got to, you know, get your dress all nice, you know what I'm saying? Smile, get yourself together, while we hold our head down and say, we sorry, my bad, I ain't really do it, I ain't mean it. But that's just sort of, but when it's,
I just said all up in it.
Right, because we're not quite as, our emotions, they're not quite as forgiving like that. Like, we are much more like, we get hurt, that's hurtful.
But that's lot of pressure on women and Black women. I'm not trying to make it an issue, but that's a lot of pressure on us.
But it's only pressure if people know about it, right?
No, it's pressure for we're looking at it. Okay, let's talk about that. We're looking at it on the outside looking in. If we saw how hurt he was, can you imagine the conversations, the arguments that they're having now, Will and Jada?
Well, right now, honestly,
serious.
Honestly, I'll be honest. I think right now, I don't really think they're having a whole lot of arguments, and if they are, they shouldn't be. To be quite honest with you, because if this happened 4 years ago, and y'all are still together, y'all are just coming to the table to acknowledge this, the hurt and the pain. Really, you should have gone through. You should be healed to the point where you don't. It's not going to reopen those traumas that deep. Your hurt now might be a little bit more, in my mind, should be a little bit more superficial in the sense that, man, people know about that, John. That's messed up. However, the actual cut to your heart, the pain is there. 4 years later, if you have decided to stay in that relationship, once it occurs, if you all talk about it, you found out about it, you all talked about it, and you decided to move on. This sounds weird, but once you make that decision to move on, you gotta allow that cut has to heal to a point where you can't let it be open and then revisit it again. Yeah, like you can't go through that same emotion and that same trauma again, because that's not fair. One, really, to yourself. And then to the other person, that's also not fair. So once you decide to move on, hey, you got to decide to move on. And if that means that sometimes you got to walk in the other room and get yourself together and refocus yourself, that's what you got to do. Mm-hmm. But you decided to stay, and you decided to have that conversation to move on. So there's a lot of things that might come with that. And the public knowing about it is just one of those things.
However, did you pay attention on the interview? What did Will say? I'm gonna get you back for this.
Oh, he meant that.
He's embarrassed. His ego. Oh. He laughed. They laughed and they joked it off. But
his ego was. But that's
that.
Ego is that part of it to me is just because people knew. So that's the superficial part of it. That's just because now people know about this thing. So I'm mad that I gotta stand up here and I gotta look like.
Oh my, shut up. I'm Will.
Yeah, I gotta do it, man. This is what you're supposed to do. This is not what I do. But I gotta do that. And I gotta do it because I'm Will Smith and I'm well known and I'm known to be funny and insightful and all this other stuff. It was, I'm going back on them again, but he had a post some 2-3 years ago where he was talking about happiness and all of that other stuff and how the other person doesn't find you can't find your happiness and that you got to go off on your own and find your own happiness, this, that, and the third. Understand what you just said. So if you're telling somebody to go find happiness, first off, you better be sure what they're unhappy with. Because if you don't know what they're unhappy with and you tell them to go find happiness, they might be fiending for something that they used to have an addiction to 10 years ago. You tell them to go find happiness. Happiness might not be what you want it to be. So, I don't know. Stuff is just, I mean.
It's just weird. It's just a weird situation because, like you said, if they sat down and talked about it 4 years ago, and like you said, he stuck with her the same way, a lot of women stick with men when we mess up and do what we do. It's just like, okay, if we talk this out, we come to whatever agreement, that doesn't mean that the pain goes away, but it just means that there's a level of, all right, you can't bring this up again to, when we get in an argument, don't bring it up, 2 years later. It's like this, sort of in Will's defense, he didn't bring this back up. Jada didn't bring this back up, but it came up. And like you said, his pride was crushed that everybody knows this. And now he has to sit at this red table and listen to his wife tell him all this stupidness about entanglement. and all this.
And hear her say how happy, he made her and how unhappy she was, and this was the happiness she needed, and how she got all of this. Like, whoa, man,
Right.
please stop.
Right.
That's the part that stung. I don't think it was so much that everybody finding out may have hurt, but then I got to sit across the table from you in front of all these people, and you telling me how another man made you so happy and all this other stuff. Like I said, that ride home when they left that red table, boy, I hope they were in separate cars, because that ride home is either silent or a lot of yelling, one of the two.
No doubt. No doubt. That's just whack how she did it. She completely attempted to take the back road. But I'm trying to figure out how in the world. This is an hour later. We started off on this subject. We was like, we don't want to talk about this subject too much.
It came full circle. I told you.
We came all the way back around to this point, man. But I don't know. They can do what they do. I've heard a long time ago that they had a different type of marriage, and they were into a different type of thing. So really, this is just all prideful stuff. So hey, you gotta get over it. But Will looks kind of funny. I don't think I've ever seen Will look like. Will look like he hasn't been out the house in a long time. Like he look a little bit disheveled.
Yeah.
Like, geez, Will.
Like she brought the red table to him. He didn't come to the red table.
Man.
She figured out wherever he was and said, "Here, we gonna have this conversation." He didn't have no say so in it.
And to Nana's point, like, how you gonna sit there and talk about somebody else made you happy? Like, that's crazy,
Boy, but like, and we gonna wrap it up because my wife texting me. I'm not talking about we doing dinner. So I'll say this so we can wrap it up. But it's like we said earlier. It's crazy how Jada is getting sort of the proverbial high fives and the pats on the back. She getting the fist bumps when she walked by. And like I said, if it had been the other way around and Will would have been banging or sleeping with one of Willow's friends, the internet might have shut down the way people would have been coming after him. So it's just that like you said, that double standard. It's when it comes to men and women, there's always going to be that double standard, whether we want it or not. I think, like I said when we spoke, Nala, the first time, just like that word independent. I don't believe in the word independent because, like I said, nobody does anything on their own. But that word equality, I think a lot of people scream for it, but then when they see what comes with it, it's just like, all right, do they really want that equality, or are they just talking because it's a new hot word, or it's a hot word just like entanglement, so now everybody wants to use it. So I don't know. So in closing, Nala, do you have anything?
No, this was great. I enjoyed it. The discussion was pretty dope, even though we didn't want to talk about it like Kat said. We kind of went circle and found ways to tie in with everything. So it was good discussion. So thank you for having me on.
What about you, Cass?
No, just to jump on your point, I had a great time. Nala, I appreciate it. Jamel, I appreciate it. This was great. Hopefully, we can do this in the future.
Thanks.
I mean, well, we're back on tomorrow.
Oh, for sure.
So Nala, if there's normally the men's thing, but I'm not keeping the women out because I had somebody hit me up on Instagram and asked me, said, "Is this only for men?" And I said, "No, it's not only for men." I said, "It's just easier to get all of the guys together, than to pick certain women to come in." So if you're free tomorrow, Nala, we're going to be on at 8:00 tomorrow. If you want to jump in late, and like I said, because of you two special people, I got the unlimited package. So we could talk all night if we have to tomorrow.
Solid. Sounds like a plan to me.
But I appreciate you all coming on. And like I said, because Will and Jada dominated our non-Will and Jada conversation, that's what I'm going to have to title this one. So I appreciate you all. Thank you. And we'll do this again real soon.
Thank you. Good
Appreciate
night.
it. Have a great night.
All right, you too. All right.